Danny Koker built his reputation on loyalty, craftsmanship, and a deep love for classic cars. But not everyone who walked through the doors of the shop lived up to those standards. For years, fans of counting cars saw a tight-knit crew laughing, arguing, and creating incredible machines together. On the surface, it looked like a dream workplace, a place where passion came first and personalities blended into something special. But behind the polished paint jobs and roaring engines, things weren't always so perfect. Over time, cracks began to show, and some of those cracks came from the very people Danny trusted the most. As the show grew bigger, the pressure increased. What started as a small, passionate garage turned into a global brand almost overnight. Cameras were always rolling, deadlines became tighter, and expectations reached new heights. Danny wasn't just running a shop anymore. He was managing a business empire, a television production, and a growing fan base all at once. That kind of environment can bring out the best in people, but it can also expose the worst. And unfortunately for Danny, not everyone handled the spotlight or responsibility the same way. There were employees who didn't just fall short. They crossed lines that couldn't be ignored. Some made decisions that damaged trust. Others let ego take over. A few simply couldn't keep up with the demands of the job. Over time, Danny had to make tough calls, removing people who were once considered part of the family. These weren't easy decisions, but they were necessary to protect the shop, the brand, and everything he had worked so hard to build. One of the most shocking situations came from someone who wasn't even a mechanic or artist. This person worked behind the scenes, handling something even more important than engines or paint, money. At first, everything seemed normal. The numbers lined up, the bills were paid, and the business kept moving forward. But slowly, small inconsistencies started to appear. At first, they were easy to overlook, the kind of thing that could be explained away as simple mistakes. But as time went on, those small issues turned into something much bigger. When the truth finally came out, it hit hard. Money had been taken, not by accident, but deliberately. Funds that were meant for the business had been used for personal gain. It wasn't just a financial loss, it was a betrayal. Danny had trusted this person completely, giving them access to sensitive parts of the business. To find out that trust had been abused was a blow that went far beyond dollars. It forced Danny to rethink how he managed the shop and who he allowed into his inner circle. What made the situation worse was how carefully it had been hidden. This wasn't a quick mistake or a moment of bad judgment. It was planned, repeated, and covered up. By the time it was discovered, the damage had already been done. Legal action followed, and while the situation was eventually addressed, it left a lasting impact. Danny became more cautious, more aware that not everyone who seemed trustworthy actually was. Another difficult situation came from someone fans knew well, someone who had been there from the early days. This person played a key role in keeping the shop running smoothly, handling logistics, managing schedules, and making sure projects stayed within budget. On camera, this often led to tension. While Danny focused on creativity and pushing limits, this employee focused on numbers and practicality. That clash created some memorable moments, but also revealed a deeper divide. Over time, that tension grew. What started as professional disagreements began to feel more personal. Working under constant pressure, with cameras capturing every moment, only made things harder. Eventually, the situation reached a point where a change had to happen. When this person left, it wasn't accompanied by a dramatic farewell or a clear explanation. They were simply gone, leaving fans to speculate about what really happened. In reality, not every departure is explosive. Sometimes, people just reach a point where they need something different. Whether it was the stress, the environment, or personal reasons, the result was the same. Another familiar face no longer part of the team. For Danny, it was another reminder that even strong working relationships can come to an end. Then there was a case of a fan favorite, someone who brought energy, humor, and personality to the shop. This employee wasn't just good at their job. They were entertaining, the kind of person who made every scene more enjoyable. Fans loved their presence, and it quickly became one of the most recognizable members of the crew. But behind the laughter, something wasn't quite right. At some point, equipment began to go missing. At first, it didn't seem like a major issue. Tools get misplaced all the time in a busy shop. But as more items disappeared, it became clear that something was wrong. These weren't small, replaceable tools. They were expensive, essential pieces of equipment. Losing them wasn't just inconvenient. It affected the entire operation. When suspicion started to point toward someone inside the shop, it created an uncomfortable situation. Trust was already fragile after previous issues, and this only made things worse. Soon after, that employee was no longer part of the team. Just like that, a beloved personality vanished from the show without explanation. For fans, it was confusing. For Danny, it was another difficult lesson about trust and accountability. Not every worst employee earned that title because of theft or dishonesty. Sometimes, the problem was more subtle. In one case, it came down to a clash of values. This individual was incredibly talented, someone who could create amazing work with skill and precision. They weren't loud or dramatic, but their contributions were undeniable. However, as the show evolved, the focus began to shift. Television demands more than just good work. It needs storytelling, personality, and sometimes even drama. For someone who preferred to focus purely on craftsmanship, that environment can become frustrating. Over time, it became clear that this person wasn't comfortable with the direction things were heading. Instead of adapting, they chose to step away. While there was no scandal or betrayal, their departure still left a gap. Losing someone with that level of skill is never easy. But, in a way, it also highlighted something important. Not everyone is meant for the spotlight, and not every great craftsman wants to be part of a TV show. Sometimes, walking away is the best choice, even if it's a difficult one. Finally, there was a case of a highly creative individual whose bold ideas helped define the look of many builds. This person had a unique style, bringing designs to life in ways that made projects stand out. Their work was eye-catching, memorable, and often pushed boundaries. For a long time, that creativity was a huge asset to the shop. But creativity can also come with challenges. Strong ideas often come with strong opinions, and not every idea fits every project. Over time, disagreements started to happen. What one person saw as bold and exciting, another saw as too much. Finding a balance between creativity and consistency became harder. On top of that, the demands of the show added another layer of pressure. Creative work takes time, but television schedules don't always allow for that. Rushing the process can lead to frustration, especially for someone who takes pride in every detail. Eventually, this tension led to a shift. Instead of being at the center of every project, this person began to step back, focusing more on their own path. Their presence became less frequent, and while they didn't disappear completely, their role changed. It wasn't a dramatic exit, but it marked the end of an era. For Danny, it was another example of how difficult it can be to balance talent, personality, and the demands of a growing business. Looking back, these 5 individuals represent very different kinds of challenges. Some broke trust in serious ways, causing financial and operational damage. Others struggled with the pressures of fame and the changing nature of the show. A few simply reached a point where their goals no longer aligned with the direction of the shop. But all of them, in one way or another, forced Danny to make tough decisions. Running a successful business isn't just about skill or passion. It's about people. And people are unpredictable. They bring strengths, weaknesses, and sometimes problems that no one sees coming. Danny learned it the hard way, dealing with situations that tested his patience, his judgment, and his leadership. Despite all of this, he kept moving forward. The shop continued to grow. The show remained popular, and new talent stepped in to fill the gaps. Each setback became a lesson, shaping how Danny approached the future. He became more careful about who he trusted, more focused on maintaining standards, and more aware of the challenges that come with success. In the end, the story of these worst employees isn't just about failure or mistakes. It's about the reality behind the scenes, the part fans don't always see. It's about how success can change people, how pressure can reveal true character, and how even the strongest teams can face internal struggles. For Danny Koker, these experiences didn't define him, but they did shape him. They reminded him that building cars is the easy part. Building and maintaining a team, that's where the real challenge begins.